Hi, I'm Jamela Kosa, and today I'll be showing you how to make a teaching aid for a maths lesson on shapes for grade knots. Okay, let me show you what you will need. You will need a cardboard box, you will need a ruler, you will need a whiteboard marker, although it is optional. You will need a Koki, it can be any color, you need a pencil, you need a pair of scissors. You need a cardboard if you're going to rather decide to cover it up to use it as a whiteboard. You also need sponges, which I got from pill boxes, and offcuts from the cardboard that you use here are also very handy. Let me show you how to create this. Very simple. When you have your collection of your sponges, cut them to the sizes and to the shapes that you want. If it's easier for you to draw, and you can see on this one, I use my ruler to draw the shapes so that it's a little bit straighter, okay? Otherwise, you can also just cut around a circle to create your semicircle. The other very handy tip is that if it's puffy and thick like this, I cut mine and I ended up with these thinner shapes which allow me to create or to repeat my patterns. Okay, so now the reason this sponge is grubby or it's stained is because I use it as a duster when I'm working on a cardboard that's covered in plastic. Now this plastic I used from from an old covered book, so I just recycled that plastic. So it comes very handy to wipe off your board. Okay, so what are patterns? And the reason I'm going into the lesson so that I can explain to you why I have drawn them in the manner that I have. And before I go into the lesson, a tip when you make this is rather, instead of using the sponge when you trace, okay, rather, and you can see here, my circles actually go quite wonky. So as I pressed, it didn't keep the format of a perfect circle. So you can use a bottle lid if you prefer. So rather what I did is I then used the offcuts to create templates for me to be able to trace the shapes, because that way my lines are much straighter. So as a tip, keep the offcuts, they're very handy. And you can see how I you know, those little lines. So if you're finicky about making sure that your board stays neat, rather use cardboard tracings because these are not great. Okay, so what are patterns? It's important to explain to your group of children that patterns can be lines, they can be shape, they can be designs, they can be material. You find patterns in different formats, but for today's lesson we will be focusing on shape patterns. And shape patterns are created when using a shape in a repeated format. Sometimes you want to double up on the same shape. Sometimes you want to just use different shapes to create a pattern. And what's important about patterns is that it's repeated twice or more. So if it's just a single positioning of each shape, it's not so much a pattern, but you need that repetition, and that's key when making shape patterns. What I also like doing when I introduce shape patterns is for the little ones to actually say each shape and to say the pattern. So circle, square, rectangle. Circle, square, rectangle. So the listening happens and they're hearing themselves. There's an auditory aspect to it. Okay, and the nice thing about sponges is that they're tactile. Okay, and they can feel the different shapes. Some are smaller, some are larger in the hand. So once you have your pattern, you trace them, you've got your circle, square, triangle. Then I've left little lines, and I used my ruler for this one just to give me a guidance of my spacing. So if you see here, if I was to cover there, that's my spacing, just to afford me the space. At the bottom here, I left a gap to just give the children an opportunity to create their own pattern using anything that they find in their environment. You can even use stones, you can use leaves, whatever is accessible to you at that moment in time. Okay, so there are your shape patterns. They can create their own there as well. I hope you enjoyed learning about this lesson and that you're going to have fun with it. Thank you.